Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another video. So in today, this is going to be the nervous system crash course. It's going to be a part of the CXC Biology and CXC Human and Social Biology crash course series. So if you're interested, you can go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you also need another crash course session, basically we have another video that's basically on the it's on mitosis and meiosis, right? So cell division is essentially, so you can go ahead and check out that video as well if you need to know more about cell division, mitosis, meiosis, and it has a past paper question also in that video if you're interested. But today the focus is on nervous system, right? And we're going to be finding out what is nervous system, what's the purpose of this nervous system, what really takes place in the nervous system. We're going to find out. So let's just get started. What is the nervous system? So basically, the nervous system is composed of neurons slash nerve cells that carries electrical impulses throughout the body, right? So neuron is basically another term for nerve cell. They both mean the same thing. So when you go on an exam, whether or not you see neuron or you see nerve cell, they're referring to the exact same thing. The exact same thing, right? So what is the function of this nervous system, right? So the nervous system is responsible for controlling voluntary and involuntary movement in the body. They're responsible for sensing stimuli and responding appropriately. The nervous system also helps to maintain homeostasis in the body, right? So just from this part alone, you have to get in your brain that, okay, nervous system, we need to be thinking of neurons, right? And we need to be thinking of electrical impulses being carried throughout our body, basically to send signals, right? So that's the essence of everything we've said so far. Let's see. Okay, how does the body maintain homeostasis? Okay, so basically homeostasis is the maintenance of the body's internal environment with the help of the endocrine system, right? So when you think of homeostasis, think of balance, right? Just think about balance in the body overall, right? And this does this with the help of the endocrine system. But in this presentation, we're not talking about the endocrine system. That's another topic. But just know that the nervous system and the endocrine system work hand in hand, right? Endocrine system uses hormones. Nervous system uses neurons, right, to carry the electrical impulses. So, but they work hand in hand, right? So, for example, sweating as a response to fever to bring the body back to a safe temperature. That is an example right here, right? So that's how does the nervous system maintain homeostasis. So for example, there's a fever, just like what we just said, there's a fever, you have a fever, and your body's defense is, okay, start sweating. We need to bring the body back to a safe temperature because you do know that we have enzymes in our bodies and we have different, yeah, let's just work with enzymes, different stuff in our body, and basically they need an optimum, they have an optimum temperature at which they can survive or basically be regulated, right? They have a temperature that they have to be at in order to survive. If our body gets too hot, then these enzymes and these things in our bodies, don't mind me saying things or stuff, just ignore that part, but let's work with enzymes, right, that are essential to regulating our body, regulating the temperature, just our overall balance in the body. When these enzymes and things, don't mind me saying things again, when they basically are not in a safe range where they will not be able to function, right? So basically that is why it's always important for the body to be at homeostasis. When you have a fever, your body's homeostasis is basically thrown off balance because now we have a threat to our body. Something's wrong in the body. That's why you have a fever. And the body sweats as basically like a defense mechanism trying to get the body back down to a safe temperature, right? So this is how the nervous system can help to maintain homeostasis, right? Because it's the signal saying that, okay, the body is overheating, something is wrong. and the brain acts accordingly and sends a message back down, and then the efferent neuron is what brings it out and say, okay, your body starts sweating, and it does this with the help of the endocrine system, right? So now the endocrine system secretes hormones. It's a very, very slow process. So what I should have mentioned with the nervous system is that the nervous system and the way how neurons carry electrical impulses is a very fast process, right? So the nervous system is like Flash. You know the movie Flash? Like it's like Flash. So these these electrical impulses are being transferred at basically the speed of light. Like bam, they're being transferred just like that. With the endocrine system, it's a very slow process where the hormones take their little time and they release. But the point is that endocrine system is very slow. Nervous system is a very fast process. Endocrine system secretes hormones, while on the other hand, the nervous system uses neurons in order to bring these messages all over the body, right? And another thing to note is that with the nervous system has a particular target, right? With the endocrine system, there's not a particular target. So for example, if something is wrong in the body and the endocrine system releases a hormone basically in attempts to regulate what's wrong in the body. For example, something's wrong in your foot. The endocrine system will release this hormone, right? And the aim is for it to get to your foot, right? But that hormone is also going to be distributed all over before it gets to your foot. While on the other hand, the nervous system is like, bam, we have a problem in the hand, we're going to send the message to the hand quickly, right? So the target is much more defined in the nervous system versus the endocrine system, where those hormones are going everywhere before it can get to the site where the problem is, right? And there are 9 hormones, 7 controlled by the pituitary gland, and it's also known as the master gland. And as I said, this is just mentioning the endocrine system, but we're not getting too much into it. Okay, so well, I jumped the gun, but anyways, there are 2 main parts of the nervous system, right? So we're getting there: the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, right? I was said before that the central nervous system is basically made up of the brain and the spinal cord, and then the peripheral nervous system is made up of the rest of the body. Basically everything except the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system, right? So we can try a little thing now. Alright, let's work with a pen. Let's try something. Okay, so we're gonna have a little stick man. Or yeah, this is a little stick man. Or let's be a girl. So it's going to be a girl. This is the girl. I can see foot, hand, everything, right? And this is going to be the brain in our head. You know that the brain has some foldings in it, right? Basically to help increase surface area, right? So we can have lots and lots of neurons. Okay, this is our brain, eye, mouth, nose, and this is gonna be our spinal cord. So basically the brain and the spinal cord, this is the brain, spinal cord, they make up the central nervous system. So this is the central nervous system. Everywhere else, including the hand, all of down here are peripheral nervous system, right? Peripheral nervous system, right? Peripheral nervous system. And don't mind the handwriting. So, and up here is central. Ready? One more, central. Right, so brain and spinal cord make up the central nervous system. Peripheral nervous system is everywhere else. So after the spinal cord, come all the way down, or maybe we should start it here. So spinal cord and brain, central, everywhere else is peripheral, basically. Right, so the central nervous system is quite straightforward, just the brain, spinal cord, that's all you really need to know. But on the other hand, we're going to erase this now. On the other hand, the peripheral nervous system is a bit more complicated. So I'm going to show you what's taking place in the peripheral nervous system. So we have our peripheral nervous system divided into 2 main parts. we're gonna have our somatic. So somatic, and if you watch the mitosis video, you'd know what the word somatic means. And yeah, so in this situation, somatic is referring to all voluntary movements, right? So I'm gonna put it right here, voluntary movements in the body, because we said that the nervous system can carry out both voluntary and involuntary movements. So the somatic part, the somatic peripheral nervous system is responsible for all voluntary movements. So voluntary right here. Over here, so it's somatic and autonomic. So autonomic right here. Oops, autonomic. There you go. Right. So this is our involuntary movement and voluntary movement. There we go. Involuntary movement. And R and Y. So somatic and autonomic peripheral nervous system. We said that this is brain and spinal cord already, right? Brain. That's brain. One more. Brain. Spinal cord. That's all there is to the central nervous system. That's all there is. This brain and spinal cord. You don't need to know anything more than that. Spinal cord. Cord. And yep. So somatic, autonomic for peripheral nervous system. Then the autonomic nervous system is gonna be divided up again into two main parts, and it's gonna be sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So you can think about it from now. What do you think sympathetic means, and what do you think parasympathetic? Right. So basically, there we have it. Peripheral nervous system is divided into two main parts, or somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Somatic nervous system is basically all voluntary movements. Autonomic nervous system is basically all involuntary movement. Now, our autonomic nervous system is divided up again into sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Now, sympathetic nervous system is really talking about fight or flight. It's what initiates that fight or flight response. So, for example, somebody come and scare you or something, but the point is that your body is in fight or flight mode. For example, if you have a panic attack, fight or flight mode. That's what initiates that panicky feeling in your body. For example, somebody come and say, "Boo!" It is frightened. Sympathetic nervous system is activated, and adrenaline is released, and body start pump, and you're ready to fight or flight, right? And this is why we say that the nervous system works with the endocrine system so much, because adrenaline is actually released by the endocrine system. So that is how both the nervous system and the endocrine system work hand in hand to basically help regulate bodily processes. Now, on the other hand, the parasympathetic nervous system is referring to basically is what calms the body down. So after your body enters into fight or flight and is ready to go, bam, 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 after you've gotten over the fact and say, okay, I'm actually safe, nothing is wrong, is this one either to confront me, your body's gonna calm down, and that's where our parasympathetic nervous system is gonna kick in and say, okay, we're gonna calm the body down, we're going back to homeostasis, we're calming the body down, right? And so basically this is the function of both of them. So just remember, central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system is divided up into two main parts, somatic and autonomic. Somatic is all voluntary movement, autonomic is all involuntary movement. And then our autonomic nervous system, which we said that is involuntary, is going to be divided up again into sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And both these processes, both sympathetic and parasympathetic, are involuntary movements. That is why they're under this category. right? So we say that fight or flight, and then this one calms you down basically. So we've gotten that part out of the way. So let us move on. So this is just a photo of the body. You have the brain, spinal cord. This is the central nervous system, and then out here is the peripheral nervous system, as I was trying to show you in the beginning. Brain, spinal cord, peripheral nervous system, and there you go. So that means that the sympathetic nervous system is taking place out here because it's a part of the peripheral nervous system. Parasympathetic out here as well. So all of this, all autonomic processes are taking place out here, as we said before. Now, see, it's again central nervous system made up of our brain and spinal cord, and our peripheral nervous system is all other parts / neurons of the nervous system. Yep, and we said two parts, autonomic and somatic nervous system. Autonomic is all involuntary movements, and somatic is all voluntary movements. Our autonomic nervous system is made up of our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous system. Yep, and then this is just recap really, but this is one of the main parts. So let's see. Before we get to past papers, we need to know what a neuron looks like. So this is a typical neuron. Not everything on this that's labeled here you need to necessarily know. For example, this one, you don't have to pay this any mind. Just minus that from this. But there we go. And this is our typical neuron. It's very simple, very easy to draw. Once you can draw it one time, you can draw it the second time. But it begins here. We have these spiky fork-like, tree-like push-out branches. These are what we call our dendrites. Now our dendrites are responsible for receiving incoming impulses, right? So they receive incoming impulses from basically the body, or from basically other neurons. Yeah, I think from other neurons. They receive other signals, right? So they receive signals from other neurons, and these are the dendrites, and basically dendrites have receptors to, receive these signals. Now, when that message gets to the dendrite, it's gonna come in, and in here it's called the cell body, aka or soma. This is our nucleus, and we know what the nucleus does. It tells the cell what to do. That electrical impulse comes down along the axon right here, and basically the axon is where electrical impulse travels along. So it's going to travel along here. You'll probably be wondering, what are these blue things? What are these? These are the myelin sheaths. They are basically they act as cushion, right? They act as cushions for the axon. They're made up of like fatty tissue or fatty, yeah, this comes fatty stuff for cushioning the axon basically, right? And in between them we have the node of Ranvier, and basically node of Ranvier allows these electrical impulses. So instead of traveling just straight along the line, what this does is that these node of Ranvier allows these signals to jump. So the signal is gonna jump here to this node of Ranvier, then it's gonna jump here to this node of Ranvier, then it's gonna jump here to this node of Ranvier, and jump here again, and that's what we call it, right? So they jump from node of Ranvier to node of Ranvier, and this speeds up the electrical impulses, because remember we said that nervous system is extremely fast. They carry signals so fast that we don't really have time for go through all this. We just say let's jump it, and we jump it. Anyways, when it gets to the end, down here is what we call our axon. So axon terminal, sorry. So axon terminal, right down here. Yes, terminal. They don't have it labeled here, but me add it. Yup, and don't mind that. Yeah. So these are axon terminals, and this is basically where these messages are going to go. But let me just explain something, right? Or actually, let me finish here, since the message is already here. So the message has traveled and the message is here. What's going to happen is that there are going to be some neurotransmitters, and that is why, yeah, we're going to have some neurotransmitters in here. and basically they are going to be in vesicles, and depending on what signal was related to this neuron, there are going to be some vesicles inside of these right here, and they're going to fuse with the membrane. Right, gonna fuse with the membrane of the axon terminal. So when they fuse with it, they're going to release these neurotransmitters, because that's the purpose of our neurons, to release neurotransmitters, right? And they're basically chemical messengers, right? So they release neurotransmitters, and these chemical messages are what, help the electrical impulse, or basically help the body to respond to stimuli. That's the whole purpose of it. So these neurotransmitters are gonna, the vesicles fuse here, and they're gonna be released into the synapse. And the synapse is just a space between two neurons. So don't mind the circles. Actually, let me get rid of the circles. That's not a good representation. So it's gonna fuse with it. When it fuse with it, all you're gonna see is just the neurotransmitters come out here. So let me get rid of this one as well. Yep. Okay, yep. So they're gonna be this. These are the neurotransmitters. Don't mind that. That's the dots. They're gonna be neurotransmitters, and basically another neuron would be here, which have receptors on them, right? Receptors. They're gonna be receptors, and they're gonna either they bind and are going to absorb, then they're gonna pass the message to the other one, or they're gonna be broken down by enzymes, or they can be reuptaken by the original neuron, basically. But yeah, this is our neuron for the most part, right? But before any of this can be initiated, an action potential would have to take place. So the process by which the neuron fires and sends the signals is called action potential, right? Action potential. Let me get to action potential. So basically, the neuron is usually in a resting phase, and I'll just have to explain this quickly, but the neuron is usually in a resting phase of negative 70 millivolts. That's usually the resting stage or resting phase of the neuron. And in order for an action potential to be released, it has a threshold of negative 55 millivolts. So have to be met. So if, for example, yeah, for example, maybe in a room, I don't know if this is a good example, yes or no, but maybe in a room, and there could be someone talking in the background, but because it did not meet the threshold, you don't even realize that the person is talking. That would be an example. So our body will not react unless a threshold of negative 55 millivolts is met. That is when the neurons say, okay, we need to fire because we need to respond to this. So for example, if a signal was sent and it's like less than that, the body's not going to respond. It's like, nah, that's not enough for us to be sending out action potentials now. So when that negative 55 threshold is met, that is when the signal is going to be sent, and this is when the action potential is going to be initiated, right? This is when the action potential is going to be initiated, and the nerve cell is like, okay, we need to be firing, we need to send the messages to all the neurons, right? So it's going to continue until basically it responds to the stimuli, essentially. But right, so action potential, the threshold is negative 55, right? This is the threshold, millivolts. Let me put the millivolts beside it. Millivolts threshold. But the neuron is usually at a resting phase of, usually at a resting phase of negative 70, but in order for it to release an action potential, it has to be at negative 55 millivolts. Yeah, and it's a bit more complex and a bit more in detail, but I don't think we need to get into more details at this level, so I'm going to leave it at that. Just know that that is how the signal is sent, and then when that's initiated, we're gonna have, once the threshold is met, we're gonna have some depolarization taking place, and then after depolarization, we're going to have repolarization, then hyperpolarization, and stuff like that, and even things like graded potentials. And a graded potential would basically be when the threshold was not met. For example, I was saying that maybe in a room or something, and people are talking in the background, but it's not enough for you to realize that they're talking, right? It did not meet the threshold for you to realize and say, okay, Wait, somebody's talking, right? So it's the same thing. So let us do some past papers real quick. So past paper questions define homeostasis and say what is important for human beings. So homeostasis is defined as a self-regulating process by which a living organism can maintain internal stability while adjusting to changing external environment. This is the pretty up definition, right? This is a much pretty up and pretty up definition, right? So, but question is, why is homeostasis important, right? And I wrote this. So to keep us alive, simple. Our bodies are fragile and we require a specific environment slash temperatures to stay alive. Which basically was mentioning that we have enzymes in our body, and we know that enzymes are proteins and they carry out essential functions in our body in our day-to-day life. And these enzymes need a particular temperature. They need they need a particular condition, right? Specific optimum temperatures, optimum temperatures and stuff like that, right? Or optimum pH, right? So when anything, if the pH or the temperature or something inside the body is thrown off, chaos is going to take place because our body and the enzymes inside need a particular temperature in order to stay alive. Because these enzymes, when the requirements, the optimum temperatures are not met, and enzymes can denature, right? That's a new word if you don't know it. They can denature when they're outside of their optimum temperatures. For example, when it's too hot, they cannot survive, and then your body is gonna be in chaos because everything is going wrong inside. So that is why it's important that we keep homeostasis, we maintain homeostasis in the body. Right now, this is it. So okay, shows drawings of a nerve and a neuron found in the nervous system, right? So basically we know this already, right? So actually this is not one of the questions in but I want to um label it, I'd say. So alright, I will just answer the question first. So identify structure 1 and structure 2 in figure 2. So in right here, you see where it's pointing. We mentioned this before. Look at my diagram. What's this? Oh, there it is. It's called the node of Ranvier. And why do we call it the node of Ranvier? Because we're saying that the message is jump, jump, jump. They don't travel in a straight line, they jump. So this is gonna be the node of Ranvier. Node of. Oh wait, I'm answering the wrong part of the question. Wait. Give me a sec, eraser. Okay, so basically, structure 1 is a neuron. Yep. So basic British spelling, spell it with a E. American spelling, don't spell it with a E, but same thing. And this is a typical nerve. So that's how inside a nerve looks. If you've never seen it before, this is a nerve. Now what is the name of the part labeled A in structure 1? This is called the node of Ranvier. Now we can write it. Node NODE of Ranvier. Don't mind everything is out of place, don't mind that. Right, Ranvier. Alright, so let's move on. A new sweetener is found to interfere with the neurotransmitters released at synapses in the nervous system. So what feature of a synapse makes neurotransmitters necessary? Right, so okay, we have everything a bit more pretty up on this page, but we said that it's neuron slash nerve. Node of Ranvier, the space between the axon, solitary conduction takes place, electrical impulses jump between nodes to speed up the process. So basically, I spelled this word wrong. So saltatory. Saltatory. I'm so blessed. So saltatory conduction. Yep. So you get the gist. So, because me I say, so the word look away, and me I say something after right. So Sorry. Yup. There you go. Alright, so yeah, so the synapse is the space between two neurons, and this is how they communicate with each other to send signals. An action potential has to be generated, runs along the axon, then forms vesicles. These fuse with the membrane and neurotransmitters are released into the synapse. Next, the other neuron now, the receiving neuron has receptors that uptakes the neurotransmitter. If it's not taken up by the next neuron, enzymes will break it down or reabsorption takes place by the neuron that was given it in the first place. Right? Now, that's basically what feature of a synapse makes neurotransmitters chemicals necessary. Did we answer that question? Let's see. Yep, okay. Let's see something quickly. Actually, we answered how do neurotransmitters function as synapses. Did we do that one? I think we answered both of them. So basically, this answers both of them in one. Then this question asks, why would persons taking the new sweetener experience difficulty responding to stimuli? Why would they experience difficulty responding to stimuli, right? So my answer is we have a situation of an agonist. So yeah, so basically agonists, they mimic neurotransmitters. So it mimics a neurotransmitter that is already in the body, which explains the decreased response to stimuli. So it said, why would persons taking the new sweetener experience difficulty responding to stimuli? Because obviously there would be something in there already mimicking, right? Mimicking the same stimuli. So if your body is used to something, or your body think that okay, we get it already, it's not, basically, as the question says, the response is going to decrease because this agonist is mimicking that neurotransmitter already. So imagine it's like you drink a sweet juice and then somebody give you another sweet juice. Like, for example, you're drinking a water, right? And you get this sweet juice and your taste buds are like, sweet. And then imagine you drink that sweet juice and it's already, let's quote unquote say, it's mimicking. You get another sweet juice, the effect is not gonna be the same. It's like, oh, another sweet juice, your body not really respond, right? So that's kind of what's taking place now. This mimics, and antagonist does not mimic, but it also causes a problem, and basically decreases the ability to, basically it makes it harder for another agonist or whatever like that. Yeah, but basically just know that an agonist mimics neurotransmitters, and that would be the situation right here of an agonist. Yeah, right. Okay, so this is a much closer look at these small vesicles. This is basically the axon terminal, right? So right down here. So I did right down here. This is how it looks close up with the vesicles. They're gonna fuse with the membrane. This is the membrane. They fuse. These are gonna be released into the synapse, which is the space between the two neurons. And this is the receptor. So this would be the dendrites of another neuron right here. So they can bring the messages. So dendrites. And they bind to the receptors, neurotransmitter, receptor, synaptic clefts, yeah, all that good stuff. Then these are just some neurotransmitters and their functions. So dopamine linked to reward processing, pleasures and addictions, movements and motivations, attention, memory and learning related to Parkinson's, anxiety, that's dopamine right here. Then you have endorphins. They're like our feel-good chemicals. They improve mood and reduce pain. Serotonin is all about sleep. I know that this neurotransmitter plays a role in the sleep cycle. Digestion enhances well-being, happiness, all that good stuff. Acetylcholine, attention, arousal, and awakening. GABA produces a calming effect. It's an inhibitory neurotransmitter. noradrenaline slash norepinephrine linked to fight or flight response. So this one right here would definitely be a part of our sympathetic nervous system, right? For the fight and flight response. Glutamate, learning, memory, brain health. It's a main excitatory neurotransmitter. And then we have our adrenaline, which is epinephrine, which is part of the fight or flight response and is released during times of stress. Right, so anyway, that is the end of this small presentation. I hope it was at all helpful. I hope you learned something, I hope that you have a good exam. Hopefully these questions, or not even these questions, hopefully things relating to this come on the exam, and hopefully you'll be able to answer these questions on the exams if they put something like this on the exam. So I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope you learned something, now you know what the nervous system does and all these things. So I hope this helped. Anyway, so if this helped at all, go ahead and, like. There you go. One final scroll through. If this was at all helpful, you can go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe. And that's the end of the nervous system presentation.